one, and I'm recording. Today I'm with Bruce Silcoff. How are you, Bruce?
Good. How are you doing?
I am well, sir. I know we've been playing tag. I've been trying to get you on the show for some time, but I'm excited that we can finally make it happen. So thank you for making time.
This is the Sunny Ray show. This is
It
this is
sure
big
is.
time. This is
Big time.
big.
I'm inching. This is going to be episode 99, Bruce.
The great one.
Yeah, my mom's proud. I can definitely, my wife is super proud. It's a milestone. It's a milestone. Why am I doing this? I don't know. I'm doing it because it's
Because you're
fun.
good.
Because it's fun. I'm
People
actually
like
really
you.
enjoying it. Yeah. It's a little bit, out of my, normal comfort zone. But the way I figure with this whole Corona thing, everyone's stuck at home. So if you're not creating content and putting it out there, then what are you doing?
Man,
What are you
we're
doing?
birds in a cage.
We're birds in a cage. So this is my window. Okay. So Bruce, pumped about today. I usually start as like a level set in terms of like where did we first meet? I want to say a few years ago, maybe more than that. That sounds
Wasn't it? Weren't you wearing that orange jumpsuit
prison.
beside
I
me?
actually got it on right now. Yeah. No, it's what was it? 20, I want to say maybe 18, 19, was it? No, maybe that's a bit too early. I feel like you came into the
No, it
picture
was
as an
probably
investor.
4 years ago. It was probably sometime in 17 or early 18.
And then you had met Joseph. There was a very fascinating conversation around that where he blew your mind with some of the stuff we were working on. And you initially made an investment into Paycase, right?
Yeah, so here's the story with that one. I
Mm,
had heard about Joseph through a common friend, Adam Nanji. And
mm,
Adam's been around fintech forever. And I was on a trade mission with the Canadian government to Brazil
uh-huh.
with Adam Nanji and some other people. And we were there to talk about the opportunities and the challenges we were facing in Brazil in particular. And I get up there and I start talking. I was in the loyalty space running reward programs, and we were working with Avianca airline out of Brazil. And one of the challenges we were facing was moving money in and out of Brazil. And
Mm,
not only Brazil, and you're familiar with the Indian market as well, but moving in money in and out of India, moving money in and out of China was a huge problem for us. And running global reward programs, like take United Airlines. United Airlines had over 100 million people in over 100 different countries.
mm.
And so loyalty points like crypto, it's a currency, it's a closed market currency, and you still need to move funds cross border. And we were having the hardest time doing it. And I'm talking with Nanji on this trip, and he says you got to go meet this kid Joseph Weinberg out of Toronto, who's using crypto to remit money cross borders, and Bitcoin's allowing him to do it frictionlessly. And I said, wow, if he could do that, he could solve one of my biggest pain points. And Joe at the time was young, just starting out. He had this vision for his company and he was looking for some money. I was looking for a solution, and I set up this coffee meeting with Joe. And in typical crypto world fashion, like he shows up 45 minutes, 50 minutes late, wearing a crypto t-shirt. I'm here in my suit and whatever, and he's wearing a crypto t-shirt. Looks like he barely brushed his hair in the last week or so and was bouncing around in his chair. But there was something magical about Joe. What he was saying, the way he was saying it, the brilliant way he was taking something so complicated like blockchain and crypto to a guy of my age and simplifying it and making it clear what the possibilities were. And you know what? He had me right away, and I put some money behind him. I've always had these three criteria for investing in companies. One,
Mm.
I have to believe in what they're doing. It has to make sense. It can't be something crazy. Like you saw the NFT for a guy who had farts for the last year. That's ridiculous. I wouldn't put money behind something like that. But what he was doing with remittance and moving money cross borders frictionlessly made sense, helped me. I thought, great. I have to be able to impact that business. I have to either be able to drive business or help them through some of my contacts, some of my experience. I thought that I was able to bring business to him. So it made sense to invest in a business where you're able to bring business to. And then the third thing were, who were the people behind that business? And there was something charismatic, something believable, something refreshing about Joseph that was a check mark on each of those three boxes. And so I put some money in. I put my money where my mouth is, invested in him. I then, a few months later, sold my business of 27, 28 years. I had been a pioneer in the loyalty space, running some of the biggest reward programs in the world. And I had enough. I had an opportunity. We raised some money
Mm.
through the private equity route. It took me two years meeting with over 75 different companies until we finally picked one. And when push came to shove, I decided I wanted something different. And so I sold out completely, and then thought I was in retirement for
Yeah.
6 months. And I started spending more time with Joe and the team. And that's probably when you and I met. It was in the first half of 2017, just shooting the shit about blockchain, about crypto, about what was going on and what the vision is for this revolution. And I use that word very carefully, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And I saw the potential behind it. The more I learned about blockchain, more so blockchain than crypto, I quickly realized what we were leading up to. And keep in mind, I'm a guy who's in my 50s now. I had been through .com. Always used tech to differentiate to solve my problems, to be a competitive advantage. We were doing predictive modeling long before AI was even a term, right?
Mm.
That's what loyalty programs are all about. It's collecting data on your customers and in direct marketing to them by talking to their listening, engaging them with offers that resonate with them. So it's always been about big data, and we use predictive modeling and technologies to do that a long time ago. I was doing mobile wallets to use your loyalty currency anywhere in the world long before Apple Pay came about. I was doing e-commerce long before Amazon was an idea that Jeff Bezos came up with. So I've always used tech to solve problems, and I got what Joe was envisioning, and I got what guys like you were in the community. And it is a tight-knit community, crypto and blockchain. And the more I talked with all these leaders, you talk to Anthony Diorio, you talk to Trevor at Polymath, you talk to all these guys and ladies, you talk to Meltem, you talk to all these people, and you hear what they are visioning, and it's passion. The passion they were using was contagious. And so 6 months into my retirement, I knew that I couldn't sit on the sidelines anymore. And I said, Joe, you have this great vision of building this monster project called Shift. You've never run $100 million company. You've never dealt with large institutions like the MasterCards of the world or the NASDAQs of the world or the Bloombergs of the world. I said, that's my world. I could bring those players to the table for you. I could help bring guidance and experience that a guy, listen, I'm on my 27th company now, over 30 years of entrepreneurial ventures. There's value in that. There's value in the relationships. And so Joe got that. And you got to give credit to someone starting out a business, especially a young, virile guy wanting to take on the world, to be able to sit back and say, you know what? I could use some help. I could use some guidance. And I have a lot of respect for Joe Weinberg to be able to say that I'd love your help and to welcome me to that. And so I joined Shift as CEO probably in the end of 17
In
as an
2017.
advisor.
Mm.
At the end of 17 as an advisor. I think it was like October
Uh-huh.
17, and don't hold me to those dates. And then around the beginning, like March of 18, became CEO of the enterprise side. So Shift Enterprise or Shift International, to basically, and my role was to take the protocol that the likes of Juan and Chris Forrester and Frederico and Joe were envisioning, and then solutioning it, building a layer on top of it to enable enterprises and governments to start using that protocol. And that's what I set out to do. And that's been my mandate.
Cool. So I guess the question was around like when we had initially met 2017, 2018. I wanted to go into some of those threads you brought up. Fascinating. So my first real question, Bruce, is what is your story? So that I think we glossed over the high level arc of your relationship with Joseph and coming into the pay case and Shiftfold. But really curious, what you said 30 years of entrepreneurship, what, like you talked about loyalty, another area that is to me feels very reminiscent of pointing to this industry we're in today. It feels like something that perhaps is a predecessor to this in some way. Like when you think about
It's
loyalty
very
points,
similar.
yeah.
It's a closed
Hmm.
currency. So, for example, if you have United Airlines mileage plus points, back in the original day, you were only able to use those points to either fly with United Airlines or eventually to get merchandise or gift cards. The same thing with crypto was not, you couldn't take Bitcoin and go buy a Starbucks with it 10 years ago. So it was also a closed environment, so to speak, and that you had to start to educate people on what it's all about, how can it be earned, how can it be used, how can it be traded,
What got you
you
into
know,
this
what's
space? Well, like, was there like, well, how was your what was your foray into it? Like, just you fall into it type of deal? Was it an
it,
aha moment one day or what?
it's a very funny story. And I will tell you, I'm self-made in that. I used to work in warehouses. I used to cut grass as a kid. My dad was an accountant. I went to school. I thought I was going to be a marketer. I worked at Procter and Gamble for 2 years. Then I worked at Kraft General Foods in marketing. And I very quickly learned that I wasn't a big company person. That I had this entrepreneurship in me.
Mm,
And anybody that's an entrepreneur knows it. It's in your blood. You can't
mm.
learn it. You're either born with it or you're not. And it's just having visions, it's having ideas, incubating new solutions, always thinking fast pace. And that's where I've been. And I've always created new companies based on needs I've seen in the marketplace, better ways of doing things, which is exactly what we're doing at Shift. Shift is creating a paradigm shift in the way data is managed. So it just was so exciting. And I got to say, there's an adrenaline rush in any entrepreneurial venture. That's the thrill of the hunt, thrill of the action that entrepreneurs are always questing or seeking in life, that thrill of the next challenge.
When the loyalty scene was bubbling up and was becoming a reality, were there parallels to what the industry today? I assume perhaps maybe not to the same extent because of the, like you said, the closed nature of some of these platforms versus Bitcoin being open and et cetera, et cetera. But I still assume that back when Aeroplan and all, I don't know, all these points were coming out that initially, I don't know. I'm just curious. What was like? What did the regulatory landscape look like around? I guess more direct of a question when it was
So
evolving.
I'm, I'm going to answer that in two parts. The easy one's the regulatory part, and that's still the same challenge that it was 30 years ago when I think loyalty programs first came about with American Airlines in the mid 80s. I think it was like
Hmm.
1985 when it first came about. I started in 1990 doing loyalty programs and I fell into it, and I'll get to that. But in terms of the second question you asked, there, like Bitcoin, you're always dealing with compliance issues and challenges. And with the
Hmm.
loyalty programs, there still is the question whether those points should be a taxable benefit. If you get it as part of an employee recognition program, or
Yeah.
you get it as money because they have cash value as
Hmm.
being part of a frequent flyer or frequent stayer at a Marriott hotel, should that be taxable? And
Hmm.
we've always had to deal with the tax agencies and be compliant and figure out ways to make it non-taxable and do that. So it's very similar, again, parallel to crypto and working within the guidelines of compliance, whether it's the travel rule that from FATF and the VASPs having to deal with, or the SEC looking at ICOs and IDOs and raises in this industry and whether they're utility tokens or security tokens. But going back to the first part, and I'm jumping around a little bit, but with loyalty, and I always was looking at incubating solutions that were technology based. When I first started out, I got into loyalty because one of my clients who I was doing marketing with, Bell Canada, lost their monopoly. And they came to me and said, we now have to go from being order takers to salespeople. And they weren't used to doing that because they didn't have competition. So when competition came about, they needed ways to compete, to differentiate. And one of the things we developed was a sales incentive program so that they would basically recognize and reward their clients, which other people weren't doing. And it was, human nature is all about what's in it for me. And if you dangle a carrot in front of people, and if the carrot excites them, they will do what you want. So that's what we created, a program that had lots of carrots, a catalog of 500 plus rewards that customers who were loyal to Bell Canada or even signed on to Bell Canada got as prizes for being customers. And so that was the first customer or first corporate loyalty program in Canada. So I became a pioneer in Canada doing it. But I had the challenge of, at the time, I was working out of my apartment, a one-bedroom apartment. I didn't have a warehouse. I didn't have a call center. I had to figure out ways around that to solution that problem. Whereas my competition in the US would have a 100,000 square foot warehouse with product on the shelves. I didn't. So I developed this technology that allowed me to drop ship products directly from the manufacturer. So instead of me, and it didn't make sense. Why would I have a warehouse with all these big Samsung televisions? And keep in mind, we carried over 2,000 brands and hundreds of thousands of SKUs. And so you can imagine the scale of things. I developed a technology that enabled me to ship directly from the manufacturer.
Brilliant. It's like Shopify. Are you aware of the drop shipping trend that, versus Amazon, let's say?
Yeah, so Amazon does the warehousing and fulfillment themselves, but they also allow people to ship directly from their warehouse. And that's what we did. And we did this 30 years ago, 30 plus years ago, long before Amazon was around, but it allowed me to compete with the big boys. And that's what tech does. Good technology allows you to do things more efficiently from a cost perspective and time perspective.
So is your background more, it sounds like more business or technical or a little bit of mixture of both? You've been a computer geek growing up. Were you tinkering with, what was your first computer? You remember it or no?
We had the Commodore computer back in the day, which is see in some museum somewhere like the Smithsonian.
You know how old you were when you got a computer? Were you one of those people that got it super young or?
My dad was an accountant. So I remember I think he started using Lotus at the time.
I remember that.
Going from writing things on paper to a computer. And that saved him hours, which is another crazy dilemma. Like, you can do things more efficiently, but it also means you're doing more. We as people now, we have tech that helps us do a lot more quicker, but it means the expectation is that we do a lot more. So how much more free time has that enabled us?
Yeah. So I guess where's going with some of this is that, Bruce, like, so my show is called Building on Bitcoin. So with the emphasis on building. And the thing I find fascinating about your story is, and we're obviously going to go deeper. And by the way, we don't have to rush it. I know we only have another half an hour with your time today, but this could be like part one. And when we resync again, next time can be part two. We can take off from there. But I wanted to touch on this notion of building. And so you said technology as a means, or this form of leverage almost, where one man in an apartment can, go up against the big boys with 100,000 square foot of, warehouse space, et cetera, et cetera. So how does one identify those wedges, those opportunities, right? Like how were you able to say, hey, drop shipping way before anybody even knew what that was? How are you able to say, no, this is it? Or how are you able to today say, hey, Bitcoin or blockchain, this technology feels right? What kind of things are you looking for there?
So I always say this when I have the opportunity to share my passion for what we're doing right now at some of the crypto conferences or blockchain conferences. I quite often throw in this same thread and talk about necessity being the mother of invention. I don't start with the technology and say, okay, where's it going to fit? Identify a problem in business or in the world and say, how are we going to solve for that problem? Necessity is the mother of invention. So I didn't have a warehouse. How am I going to compete with the big boys? How am I going to deliver rewards without a warehouse? I
Mm,
developed a tech to do that. How do
got
we
it.
know what rewards to put in a catalog when I only have 64 pages of real estate to put 500 products? How am I going to, and it costs me a lot of money to produce those catalogs. How am I going to get the best return on my investment? I have to know what the people want in that catalog. Nowadays, it's a lot easier. You do a digital catalog, you could change products as quickly as you want. But back in the day, we did a printed catalog that was static for 1 year. So you had to be damn sure you knew what you were putting in that catalog because it lasted for a year. So
Mm,
that's when we developed tech for predictive modeling around negative searches, things people wanted that we didn't have in the catalog, asks that people
interesting.
asked us for that we didn't have, holes in our catalog, popular trends, how to include those, do research. It was all about data and manipulating data, big data. And so that's how I became a tech geek, as you want to call it. I don't
Mm,
know how to code, although I know how to read lines of code. I don't know how to code myself, but I know what I want the technology to do. And Steve Jobs always said, surround yourself with smarter people. I've always been successful in business because I knew what my strengths and weaknesses were. I
mm-hmm,
knew
mm-hmm.
that I wasn't a coder. And I needed to be able to take a whiteboard idea and go to someone or a team and say, let's build it now.
Mm.
Can we build it now? And that's
Fascinating.
my relationship with technology
Technology.
over
And
the.
so I guess so just to kind of go on with your like the story, like your storyline. So I guess you business more sales focused, but obviously a passion for technology, spend like you said 20-25 years in loyalty. I think you said you had some successful exits in there as well. That's something that many entrepreneurs don't ever get to experience, right? Because the failure rate is quite high. But maybe before we move on to the next topic of shift and all that, anything else you want to share on in terms of the storyline and I don't know,
Yeah,
just things that you might
I
want to share with yourself at the beginning of this journey that you wish you'd known.
here's one thing I did learn early on, and I tell this to a lot of people. You will make money, you will lose money. You could always make money again in business. You cannot change your reputation, or it's a lot
Mm,
harder to change your reputation once it is tainted. And in 30 plus years and 20 odd, businesses, I've never screwed anybody. I've never fucked people over. I've always maintained the highest integrity in terms of relationships. My word was my word. I believe in the golden rule. You treat people the way you want to be treated. Yes, I could have made more profit, bottom line thing, by screwing people over the years, but that's not the way I conducted myself. That's not the way I recommend people doing it. You have to treat people with respect. You have to be honest in business. And that's how you build a network. And one of the values I bring to the table are my relationships. I put a lot of effort into those relationships over the years and given respect to the people always on the other side of the table. Whether a deal was done or not, I always treated people with respect at all levels of the business, right? Whether they're and even more so, the people that clean the toilets in the office, that did the truly hard jobs, got my respect, because that's a tough job to do. And the people that you get up and when you're in an airport at 4 o'clock in the morning and you go to get a coffee to just keep your eyes open, and the guy serving the coffee puts a smile on your face because of his personality, that's important. Okay. That's a talent. And that's just something, a lesson I can impart on people is, and when you have a meeting at 2 o'clock, show up at 2 o'clock, show up 10 minutes early,
Mm,
respect somebody else's time. We don't do a good enough job doing that.
mm,
Respect the person on the other side of the table, and you will benefit from it down the road. Take the high road all the time. That's just the
yeah.
way I've led my life, and it's worked for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I also 20 years ago chose realized that I liked programming and enjoyed my programming classes, but that wasn't my route. And dealing with people would be, even though it would be hard and not easy. But I always love talking to people that have taken the route of sales and business development and marketing because no one teaches you that shit. Like there is no course. There is no, isn't it funny that it runs like the business world, but you literally, I don't, I've never heard of a university course on sales, but you gotta learn it. There's some books
They
here
don't teach it. Or relationship management or anything like that. It's
or
it's
money.
not. But
uh,
but you learn from trial and error in life how people respond to you. You know
mm,
what works, and you have a choice. You stick your head in the sand and ignore all the negative feedback you're getting, or you take note of it and improve as a person. Right? Nobody's perfect. You're going to make mistakes. It's how you deal with the negative that really differentiates you. When things are good, everyone's your best friend.
mm,
It's when things turn a little negative that separates people, that distinguishes people. And that you see when things get tough or when things get actually sometimes too good, you see the negative part of humanity. You see the greed, you see the ego, you see the backstabbing going on in businesses. And it's unfortunate.
yeah, yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Was there anything else you want to share in terms of your story? I'm sure we could spend a long time on you have a very fascinating one, but in terms of for all intents and purposes, our conversation here, do you feel pretty comfortable?
Yeah,
So
Sunny, the only reason I'm on the Sunny Ray show, because this is the Sunny Ray show, because you are someone who I respect. You're a great guy. You asked if I would do this, and it's an honor and a privilege.
I'm really enjoying this. I'm sure on Friday at a 5 o'clock here, we both have better things to do, but this is a lot of fun, Bruce. So thanks for
Always.
entertaining me here. So this, okay, so now let's maybe move into this. So by the way, I've interviewed Joseph now 3 times and a couple other people looking at the shift problem. But what is shift, or beyond that, even like identity as a larger topic? We talked a little bit about remittance and how that was the initial problem set that Joseph set out to solve. What happened from that point on that eventually led to this project shift?
Joseph was in the remittance business, and part
Uh-huh.
of when you send money that's over a certain amount, whether it's $1,000 or $3,000, regulators force you to be compliant. You have to know and track the movement of that money across borders. You want to prevent terrorist financing, you want to criminal money going across borders. So to be compliant, you have to do something called KYC, which is know your customer, and AML, anti-money laundering compliance, so that this money isn't funding wars or terrorist activities or criminal activities cross borders. And that's why the regulators like FATF exist today, is to protect economies, to protect individuals against these negative events in life. And so when Joe was getting in the remittance business, it was one thing to send small amounts of money, but as soon as he started considering larger amounts, you had to KYC. And the problem with KYC was it's a very heavy burden to do a KYC on someone. I think JP Morgan came out with a stat that they had to hire over 13,000 people at a cost of about $100 per KYC to be compliant. RBC in Barbados shut down their office because compliance with respect to KYC was just a tremendous burden. Joseph had this idea, along with the other founders, to leverage blockchain to build a framework, an attestation framework that validated the KYC of an individual in a decentralized manner and in a manner that eliminated the need to duplicate that siloing of data. And part of the problem we were facing in society, and I go back to necessity is the mother of invention, the need we had was to get away from centralizing our data storage, to siloing it in the same place. You go to a bank, let's say RBC, they could KYC you within that same bank 15 different times because each business unit would do their own KYC at a cost of $100 each time. So you want to get a mortgage, they're KYCing you. They want to, you get a credit card, KYCing you, move money, KYC, investing in their capital markets, KYC. So you could see that we were duplicating this effort, which was ridiculous at a high cost. And we were also putting that data in silos. So we were putting everybody's information in one vault within each unit, but we were replicating those vaults. So think about it as a target. If you have Facebook had 557 million data records in one location, that's worth a lot of money for someone to get. And then not only do they have it, but Google will have it, the bank will have it, and other. So your data is vulnerable to being attacked. One, it's attractive because there's a value to that being attacked to criminals. And two, it was easy to attack because it was in one location. So along comes this vision to say, okay, let's share the KYC via an attestation framework so that if RBC already did it and TD needed it or NASDAQ needed it or somebody else needed it, one of those reputable parties could validate and say, I've already done the KYC on Sonny. He is legit. He is not a terrorist. Okay, right away, you're saving the duplication of effort and you're saving the duplication of need of storage. So you are taking a problem and you are simplifying it using a new technology that enabled you to do that. And Shift was able originally, and wrote a white paper on this, come out and say, we are going to take KYC AML and we are going to make it more secure and more efficient using our blockchain-based protocol. And so it was fantastic. It was going to relieve all these people the burden of KYC and bring down the cost to do that. So it made sense. What happened very quickly after was that we realized it didn't only have to be used for KYC and AML. The protocol would make any data exchange more efficient and more secure. So why not apply it to hospital records, vaccine records, to anything attached to your digital identity, whether it be your passport information, your driver's license, your proof of address, your voting authentication that you are eligible to vote, that you own that property locating at 123 Main Street. There are so many credentials that you can validate and share at a much more efficient and secure manner using the Shift protocol. And the beauty about it also, take it one step further, you add a permission or consent layer to that, and you now put the power of the individual who owns the data to control their own data. So you're protecting the data, you're disseminating it more efficiently and more securely, and you're giving the person who owns it control over their data. Win. Love it.
Is this fair to say what Bitcoin is to money, Shift is to identity? Ish?
No, because Bitcoin, I'm going to say, is it's a means to store and share value, right? Easily. So the storage part is what differentiates versus Shift, because Shift actually doesn't store the data. Okay,
Right.
it shares or provides the attestations or the validations of the data across the network.
Got you. Talk to me about Binance and a lot of these, like recently in CoinDesk, there's been a lot of news about Shift partnering with a lot of the major industry players. And maybe, I know we don't have a lot of time and maybe this can be a bit of we can tail off here and allude a bit to the next episode. But talk to me about that. I know a lot of people ask me about it as well. But I'd love to have you explain what that's about and what the travel rule is and the Veriscope network.
So I'm going to take a step back and say one of the things about building something as ambitious as Shift, and
Hmm.
I'm going to say not only build, it was one thing to have a vision 4 years ago or 3.5 years ago to have a white paper and say,
Uh-huh.
what a great idea.
Right.
We're launching mainnet, right? So it's built, it's ready. That vision became reality. But when you build something with incredible potential and
Mm-hmm.
need that Shift has, the hardest thing to do is to stay focused and not boil the ocean, because at the end of the day, there are unlimited possibilities
Right.
in terms of what this data superhighway
Mm.
can do for businesses, regulators, governments, whatever. So we chose as a company to focus on, and listen, we didn't have unlimited budgets either. We chose to focus on two products or two solutions. And we were smart to do that because it got us to the finish line. The first product of two that we're going to launch is something called Veriscope. And Veriscope is basically a solution to enable VASPs
Mm-hmm.
to comply with FATF's travel rule. So similar to what we were talking about before with KYC and AML, it's important that any movement across exchanges is identified where those funds are flowing from. This is a recent rule that FATF, the governing body regulator over these VASP, put into place and said, you guys need to be compliant. And fortunately, Shift had a technology or a protocol built that would facilitate that for them. And when you can do that and solve that problem and do it efficiently, and
Mm-hmm.
if you build it, they will come. And we right now have over 30 exchanges enlisted to use our Veriscope solution. And Sonny, you and I work on business development, and we're on daily phone calls fielding inquiries about people wanting to leverage what Shift has built, because there is a huge need for that. The second
Definitely.
product,
Yeah.
sorry, the second product of two that we focused on was something called Perseid, and that is our digital identity framework,
Mm-hmm.
which we go into jurisdictions, we work with governments to basically put the citizens of that jurisdiction on a digital identity framework where all their data is in a digital wallet and can be interoperably exchanged across institutional boundaries, but also geographic boundaries as well. So we're really proud of both those solutions. Our first launch for our Perseid solution will be with Bermuda. We've had an amazing relationship with that jurisdiction. I think it's going on 3 years now. In May, it'll be 3 years. We are blessed to be able to sit at the table with a leader, a progressive thinking leader like Premier David Burt, who met with us at the World Economic Forum in Davos, realized the potential of blockchain and said, I want to leverage that power and make my country a world leader in blockchain. And I want to have you and all the top thinkers in that space come and help us build an infrastructure, a blockchain infrastructure in Bermuda to the benefit of our citizens. And that's what we did.
Cool. Cool. And then to speak to the Veriscope. So you said a bunch of things, FATF, travel rule. I'm sorry, a bunch of these 4-letter, 3-letter words that you and I probably know about. But so the travel rule, in essence, it is a bit controversial, obviously, right? I'm sure you've read a lot of the articles in the space about the discussions going on within the community. Would it be worthwhile to call out the pink elephant in the room? There is this conversation around this travel rule, right? A lot of people have concerns around it. Given that we don't have a whole lot of time, from my perspective, I'll share that it's one thing to be super idealistic, but when you're actually building a business, which is the topic of this podcast, you start to learn that reality is different from what you maybe imagine it to be. And a big reality, as you said, whether you're building a remittance business in crypto, whether you're building an exchange or a brokerage, is you need to be able to interface with the traditional financial world, which means dealing with banks and these entities, payment processors, et cetera, have the need to interface with the world and they've been
Right.
doing it for a long time. And if you don't play by their rules, whether you like their rules or not, you don't get to play. So in short, that's my rebuttal and to all of the, I guess, negative energy that comes at, I think, projects like this. But I like to call out these things because people are thinking about it. So why not address it?
I love this discussion topic. That was a great question, Sonny. With the Satoshi white paper at the time of the financial crisis in the world that they were facing, it was a revolution. It was a fuck you to the traditional establishment. It was cowboys saying, we don't need your monetary policy from central banks, your
Mm,
centralized manipulation of markets. We're going to decentralize everything. We're going to put the power into the hands of the people and do things our way. So fuck you, everybody in the
mm,
traditional world. But with time and with any argument, you get to take a step back and take a deep breath, and rational minds pretty much win out. And we went from being revolutionaries to revolutionizing the way things are done. Okay, I'm not saying fuck you anymore, but to sitting at the table with the regulators like FATF and say, okay, what does it take for us to play in your world and improve your world? And listen, you could always be this renegade society and deal in gray markets or dark webs and things like that. But to really legitimize an industry, you have to play with the traditional players, right? Or topple them or completely topple them. And what we're seeing now as part of this compliance and this FATF travel rule thing is the two worlds coming together. They realize that Bitcoin is here to stay. They realize Ether's here to stay. Let's face it, they're not going away. But how do we work it so that the traditional world is comfortable? So
mm.
that the consumers who don't get how blocks are created by nodes or by mining. I'm sure there's if you go to an 80-year-old woman and say Bitcoin's being mined, they think there's some deep hole in the ground that people are there with shovels looking for Bitcoins, right? How do you bridge the gap between old world thinking and new world revolutionary ideas to improve? You bring all these parties to the table together and say, listen, we get that Bitcoin has been attractive because of the anonymity behind it and the ability for people to move money by only having a numerical sequence address and not being able to tax it. But if you really want this thing to be legitimized, if you want the MasterCards of the world to start accepting, having their merchants accepting it around the world and to play at that, if you want
Institutions.
institutions to
Hmm.
play at your party, then you have to make it comfortable for them. And so if you have to give a little bit and remove that anonymity, probably the traditional crypto guys or women will be cringing or turning over in their wherever they are, saying this is not what it was about. It was about the anonymity. That's important, but this is part of the evolution, of
But Bruce, I should also just push back in the sense that it's not about making Bitcoin not anonymous. Bitcoin is just Bitcoin. Meaning you're never going to be able to change that. It's more about being able to create opt-in pools of KYC users, right? Where counterparties such as institutions that have requirements, regulatory requirements, whether they even want to or not, they have to abide by these rules. They can then play. Is that what we're talking about? Because we're not.
you put the cart before the horse there a little bit by
Mm,
saying these opt-in pools for KYC stuff. Yeah, that's needed because of the compliance regulations that's been imposed on the community. People realize that there are trillions of dollars going through, and the SEC has no way of monitoring that, of protecting consumers.
mm.
The IRS, the CRA have no way of taxing capital gains on that money. So are you going to circumvent traditional financial systems?
Mm.
You can do that. That's what it was originally intended to do. Or do you want to work with traditional systems and make everybody happy at the party. And that's where I think we're at right now. Although it was shoved in their face by a regulator to validate it, to legitimize it, I think it's something that makes sense.
Yeah, Bruce. And by the way, thanks for this. Let's do another session. We'll go deeper into some of these threads. I'd love to. But just to finish it up on, my last question was around what's one thing that you believe to be true that most others would disagree with you on within the Bitcoin space or crypto space, whichever one you want to take.
I am going to say that crypto and blockchain is really misunderstood. People think it's all these kids saying F you to traditional financial systems. It's a way to get rich quick, scams, schemes, whatever you want to call it. I really don't think it's that anymore. I really think that in the last 10 to 13 years, a lot of legitimacy has come out of this, a lot of good. I'm involved with ID 2020 with the United Nations and trying to bring identity to 1.2 billion people in this world that don't have a legal ID. That's a great use case for what we're doing. Solving KYC, AML is great. Peer-to-peer lending, making it more efficient, more faster and cheaper for individuals to borrow money helps people, helps society. Allowing you to take your hospital records and travel the world amidst COVID-19 and let people know that you're vaccinated twice, that your PCR test says that you do not have COVID is important. We just shut down our economy here. We shut down our airport to India and Pakistan because there's a problem there. But there are some good players that we're just not letting, come through the border. I'm going to use this example, but it's almost like chemotherapy with cancer. You throw a bomb into someone's body and kill all the bad, but you're also hurting some good too. We have to work together on some of the really great initiatives. It's a tight community, the blockchain crypto community. So I've been fortunate enough to be at some of the conferences, listen to some of the most brilliant minds. Susan O with AI is one of the most brilliant speakers I've ever heard. And some of the things and ideas she has for blockchain are incredible. I dealt with a guy, Oscar, who's using it to bring funding, banking to underprivileged people in third world economies, people dealing with migrant people coming that don't have homes, coming across borders that are struggling right now. So there's so many great use cases that we are doing. It's not just about get rich quick schemes that people think Bitcoin and Ethereum and blockchain is all about. It took us almost 2 years to get a bank account, because as soon as they heard blockchain, they said, you're blacklisted. We are working with governments. We are working with regulators to do good. We are working with the United Nations, the Vatican, the OECD. This is legit. There are a lot of legitimate projects here that need to be listened to, that need to be heard.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there are guys, Tesla and Elon Musk and Jamie Dimon and Premier David Burt, who get it. We need more of those people.
Yeah, isn't Elon the wealthiest guy, and Tesla's one of the most successful companies on earth? They've got Bitcoin on their balance sheets. So the Renaissance is here, and it's here to stay, and we're just here to help that along. Bruce, this has been fascinating. Where do people follow you in terms of your Twitter handle, and maybe just drop the Shift website or whatever, just in terms of, where do people plug into your consciousness?
From social media, I'm probably the best reached on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. Oh my God. Okay. That's out of almost 100 episodes. That's the first person to say LinkedIn.
Yeah, I do. Most of my posts are on LinkedIn. I have an expansive network that I built over the years through LinkedIn.
I bet.
I come from the traditional world.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm a big LinkedIn guy too. I like the LinkedIn land. I get a lot of random messages, but there's some goldies in there. That's for sure.
There's over 550 million people on LinkedIn.
Isn't that exactly the number of people that were hacked from the Facebook?
Yeah, 557, pretty close.
I don't know where I'm going with this. But Bruce, this has been a fascinating conversation. Thank you for sharing your story, the story behind Shift. I think a lot of people will find this very entertaining and educating. With that, like I said, anything, if there's nothing else outside of LinkedIn, I guess we'll bring this one to a close.
I just want to acknowledge I just want to acknowledge the team at Shift. I want to acknowledge Chris, Joseph, Juan, Frederico, yourself, even the people that were there
Lucy,
before, the Michelles, the Suzannes, the people that helped take this vision and make it reality, because it's never about one person. It's a village that you need to make something like this happen. And I'm really proud of the team. I'm grateful to the incredible advisory thought leaders and supporters we have, to the community ambassadors we've built. So I just want to thank everybody for believing in us, for supporting us, and helping us get to the first of many finish lines.
Investors, partners. Oh my God, there's so many people like this that have come together to really make this happen. So great, great. Okay, awesome. Bruce, thank you very much. I'm going to bring this, just stick around for 10 seconds here. I'm going to kill the recording.
Thank you.